the life of T and M. Thank you so much for coming back and watching another one of my videos. If you're new here, hi, my name is Mary and I make videos all about nursing. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Join my journey and help me grow. So in today's video, as you can always tell by the title, I'm going to be going over IDG or IDT meetings. You may be having so many questions, such as what does that even stand for? What does that mean? If you're in hospice, you may want to know what does it entail. So I actually survived my first IDG meeting and I wanted to come on here and give you some tips, how I prepared for my first one, what did I learn, and just give you all the aspects of my first time in this meeting. So I'm going to put up a definition of what an IDG or IDT meeting is. It's the interdisciplinary group or interdisciplinary team that's responsible for the holistic care of the hospice beneficiary. It is a team which is responsible for the development and review of the beneficiary's plan of care. At minimum, the IDG must include the following hospice employees who are qualified to practice in the professional roles. There should be a doctor of medicine, a registered nurse, a social worker, and a pastor or other counselor. So you may call them IDG, IDT meetings, whatever the case may be. It has the same exact concept. People just use group or team, however your hospice does it is a-okay. So these occur every 2 weeks at my facility, and right now, of course, because of what's going on, they are remote. So we all meet virtually to discuss all of the patients that we have on our census. So as the registered nurse, I have to prepare my own patients' notes for this meeting. And so it depends on what electronic medical record you use, but there should be an option in there for you to put in your notes. I know all the hospice nurses dislike doing this part because not only are you charting and you're seeing your patients all week, but you also have to write this whole narrative just for your patients for this meeting. But of course, we have to remember the health and safety of the patients that we're dealing with. We want to make sure they're getting holistic care and that anything clinical or nursing wise that we bring up to the table. And it's a good time for everyone to get together and to talk about the needs, if there are any needs of the patient, and to talk about what is your plan, what are you seeing, how can we collaborate just to make sure that the patient's plan of care and goals are being met amongst the whole team. So as a disclaimer, as I always say, I'm not an expert in this field. I only do hospice part-time because I am a full-time public health nurse. So I am learning along the way, but I do just like to share my firsts of everything, what I've learned, and I always want feedback from you guys. I'm sure there are some veteran hospice nurses on here that are watching this. Please comment down below what tips and tricks you have for these type of meetings to help not only myself, but other nurses who are watching this. There may be some nurses in here that are just starting hospice like myself. Maybe you're only a year in, or maybe you're in nursing school and you think, I want to do hospice when I get out of nursing school. So I know I have so many different types of individuals watching this, but I'm going to try to make it inclusive for all. So when I heard I had my first IDG meeting, I immediately called my supervisor and got a rundown from him asking, what does it entail? How can I be prepared? I then went on my wonderful Facebook nursing group and I searched in the search bar IDG, IDT meetings, and I read all the examples that those nurses gave. And then I went on my patient's chart for the past 2 weeks to see any declines that this patient has had. Also, I just want to say that IDG meetings should be talking about what has changed, what is new in the past 2 weeks, and then what you're planning to do in the next 2 weeks going forward. So a few little tips that I wrote down for myself. Honestly, I have them right here on my phone because I use these for myself. And after my first one, I also got to hear what other nurses were saying during their report. And I'm sure as I go to more meetings, I'm going to hear more from the other nurses and I'm gonna learn and I'm gonna write more notes. So I'm of course gonna make a part 2 maybe in a couple months just to update you of more things that I've learned. But this is what got me through my very first IDG meeting. So first point, this should be a very brief clinical update. We don't want to spend hours and hours and hours in IDG meetings, right? So we just want it to be brief. We do have our notes in there when we go see the patient, but this specific meeting, it should be a brief clinical update, just talking about the past 2 weeks. So you also want to talk about if there was any med changes in the past 2 weeks? Did you update anything in the plan of care? Did you add anything new to the plan of care in the last 2 weeks, or did you resolve any of the plan of cares? If there are any wounds, you definitely want to talk about the wounds. Are they improving? Are they worsening? Is skin integrity intact, or is there some breakdown? So you want to talk about those. You want to talk about any behaviors or declines. Then you want to talk about your plan for the next 2 weeks. I always like to add in a quick little sentence that I'll be focusing on comfort, safety, and if applicable, wound treatment for the next 2 weeks. So going back to declines, I just wanted to elaborate on that for a little bit, because declines in hospice are important, not only for billing purposes, but also for the team to know, what is this patient looking like, right? Because we have our eyes on the patients way more than the doctor does, right? Obviously. And also the social worker and the chaplain. Right now, your counselor, chaplain, or social worker may be doing virtual visits. They may be doing telephone visits. They may not see them as often. It depends on the care frequency that you have set up for this patient. So I'm just saying, for a regular routine care patient, a social worker and chaplain may only call once a month, of course, depending on the needs. But if they're only going once a month and you're going weekly, bi-weekly, you're at least going weekly. And so you're seeing the patient every week. And so you have more updates for the team. So you definitely want to talk about declines. So there's so many different ways that you can document declines. So you definitely want to talk about sleep. Is there any decline in sleep, such as, are they sleeping more, 20 hours a day? And when you're talking about declines, you want to say, what were they doing a week ago or 2 weeks ago? So for instance, last week they were sleeping 8 hours a night. Now they're sleeping 18 hours a night. So you always want to try to compare it to the week before or 2 weeks before, to show 2 weeks ago they were doing X and now they're doing Y. So you also want to talk about nutrition. 2 weeks ago, were they eating almost 75% of their meals 3 times a day, and now they're only drinking 1 Ensure? Or were they drinking a cup of water and now they're only taking sips of water? So you want to try to measure and compare what their nutrition looks like. You want to talk about their skin, how their skin integrity is. Is it intact? Do they have any wounds? What does that look like? Of course, we all love bowel movements. You want to talk about, when was their last one? What's their bowel regimen? Any issues going on with that? You also want to talk about their pain. If pain is a real issue, I know in certain diagnoses, pain is probably the #1 factor that a lot of nurses are working on hard to make sure that their patients are comfortable. So most of the time with my patients, I'm changing pain medications all the time. So I like to bring that up. You know, the patient was complaining at 8 out of 10 pain. We've increased the methadone or the morphine or whatever medication they're on, and they were down to a 4 out of 10, and they've been stable the past week. So you want to talk about pain, definitely. You can also do the MAC, the medial arm circumference. You could talk about maybe 2 weeks ago they were at a 24 and now they're at a 20. You can talk about how their clothes are fitting looser and they used to fit tighter. Maybe they're not alert and oriented anymore. Maybe they're gazing. So there's many ways you can document declines, but you definitely want to try, like I've always preached before, to compare it to the week or 2 weeks before, because then that shows the decline. Because if I were just to say, oh, the patient's eating 25%, but what if they were eating 25% last week and the week before? Doesn't show a decline. So I always try to compare, like I've said before, 2 weeks ago or last week they were doing X, Y, and Z, and now this week they're doing X, Y, and Z. Now I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of different declines that you can identify and different things that you want to add to your IDG meeting, but just know that these are the very, very basics that got me by the first time, and I got some good feedback from my supervisor, so I think I did something right. But this is all a learning lesson. Nursing is always a learning lesson, always learning something new. There's always new knowledge. You can always learn from each other. So this is why I'm here, to share my experience, to share my knowledge, and to get some knowledge from you guys, and so we can all learn together for better care of our patients. Last thing I would add to the IDG is if there's any issues that you need to bring forward to anybody that's on the team. Hopefully you're communicating with your doctor ahead of time, but if there's some medication that you've really been working with that's not really working, we can work as a team while we're on the meeting, but we don't want to drag out conversations too long in these meetings unless it's absolutely necessary. Because if I can have a side conversation with the doctor, I will do that not at the IDG meeting. But for instance, for an example, maybe a family's really struggling with the imminent death of a patient, or they need assistance with caregiving because they're getting burnt out. This is a perfect time to bring it up to the social worker or to the counselor. You can say, hey, when you did your assessment, did they identify that they were struggling or that there were any issues? Because when I was there this past week, I was noticing that the caregivers are getting burnt out, or they can really use some more support. And they may say, well, my last check-in was a couple weeks ago, so you know what, thank you for bringing that up. I'm gonna call them and check in. Or, yes, I'm working with them to get some caregivers. I will follow up with the family and let them know what caregivers I got and when they're gonna be there. So there are certain things that are important to bring up because the whole team is there and we can all collaborate and come up with good ideas. Also, nursing wise, if you have a difficult patient, maybe who's on a trach, or they have a feeding tube, or they have a wound, a chest tube, whatever the case may be, and you're just like, hey, this is what I've been doing, it's not really working, what have you guys done? And so you can kind of bounce ideas off each other to make sure that the care of this patient is the best that it can be. So we don't like to make these meetings too long, like I say, but it's definitely an opportunity to come forward, give a brief update, any major issues, let's talk about them, resolve them, and let's move on to the next patient. So that's it. I'm gonna stop rambling. I hope you learned something. I hope you took some notes, took some things away. If you have your first meeting coming up, good luck. Don't be nervous. Just write your notes before you go in so you have a script that you can read off of when you're there. Highlight any important things that you wanna talk about, and you're gonna do fine. Of course, I was nervous before I went in, but because I did some prepping, I got through it and I think I did okay. So if you guys have any questions, like I said, leave them down in the comments box. Don't forget to subscribe. Go ahead and turn on that notification. I never say that, but when I post a new video, you guys won't know unless you turn on notifications. So go ahead and subscribe, turn on the post notifications, comment down below any other videos you want to see, if you have any IDG tips and tricks that we can all use perhaps, or if you learned something new. All right, everyone, well, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you in my next video. Have a great day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.